Good day. We are now in our Social Work 131, Knowledge and Philosophical Foundation of Social Work Profession. And now, we are already in our week 9 of our finals. Final coverage po to. We have here the social work helping models and approaches in the Philippines. So, first, let us have casework approaches in the Philippines. Ano ba yung approach na ginagamit in casework or in helping with individuals? So, first, meron tayo ditong functional approach, problem-solving approach, psychosocial approach, task-centered approach, and crisis intervention, family-centered approach. Let's move on to yung functional approach. So, functional approach, it is a social work method for engaging the client through a one-to-one, one-to-one po, relationship in the use of social services toward his own and general social welfare. One-to-one po to. Functional approach, this approach was conceptualized by Ruth Ismaili. The focus of the intervention is the delivery of services to the client. Common approach po ito na ginagamit sa Philippines. Meaning kung ano yung function ng agency to deliver services. Okay? Functional approach developed at the Pennsylvania School of Social Work in 1930s. Emphasis was on the relationship, the dynamic use of time, and the use of agency function. Kaya yung sabi ko, diagnostic categories have tended to be avoided as having limited usefulness. And we move on to problem solving. By the way, in the book of Mendoza, these approaches were further discussed. We just have a glimpse of these approaches. The second is problem solving approach. It assumes that a person's problem solving capabilities or resources have been broken down and been impaired or maladaptive. So, problem-solving approach, the focus of the treatment is in helping the person go through the scientific problem-solving so that he will act and resolve his problem with only minimum help. Problem-solving approach, the experience of problem-solving will be significant that the client imbibes and transfer the learning to other problems he may encounter in the future. So, it's all about focusing on the problem and helping the client to solve that problem. In the further even when the worker is no longer there. Problem-solving approach identified with the work of Helen Harris Perlman at the Chicago School in 1957. The purposes of the processes are to free the client for investment in tasks related to the solution of the problem, involve the client's ego in work designated to deal with the problem. Okay, nakikita natin it's all about dealing the problem and to mobilize inner and outer forces in the service of satisfactory role performance. Third, we move on to psychosocial approach, and it is also known as diagnostic. Okay? One of the first models employed, developed by Gordon Hamilton and her associates from the Columbia School of Social Work. Psychosocial approach, according to Gordon Hamilton, treatment here is focused on the individual and his functionality. So, psych means the inner part, psycho of the individual, and social of the individual functionality in the environment. Cause and effect relationship are identified between the individual and environment. Ego psychology and behavioral sciences provide important underpinning for practice. Model has Freudian base. Okay, it is based on Freud. Psychosocial approach is concerned with the inner, the psycho, realities of the person, his emotional, mental, and social processes, and social context, or what we say, environment in which he lives. Used with clients affected by traumatic incidents. Okay? Ito po yung ginagamit talaga, kalimitan in casework sa may traumatic incidents. And task-centered approach, of course, understandable naman po sa anong approach. It is focused on task-centered. Okay? The task. Ano yung gagawin na task? Okay? Treatment concentrates on the helping individual clients to achieve specific or limited goals of their own choice within brief and bounded periods of service. Task-centered approach was developed at the University of Chicago in 1970s, designed to solve specific psychosocial problems of individuals or families in a short-term or time-limited form of practice. And caseworker and client reach an explicit agreement on the particular problems to be worked and also the probable duration of the treatment. So, if there is a problem, gawa natin yan ng task. Ano yung makakaya natin dyan, okay? So, task-centered or short-term approach, it is similar to crisis intervention, but it focuses on the task, okay? To be achieved by the client. It may focus on a specific behavior Wag po tayo ma-confuse dito, even though it is on behavior or ginagamit ito in crisis incident, but then if it is task focus, it is task-centered approach, okay? It may focus on specific behavior or social environment that needs to be changed. The fifth one, the crisis intervention, it is the application of the casework approach, which tries to actively influence the psychosocial functioning of the person during a period of disequilibrium. I think I already discussed this on the book. Crisis intervention approach. Crisis by the way, what is crisis? No, crisis is an upset in a steady state, a state of disequilibrium that gives an obstacle in the fulfillment of important life goals. If there is already a shaking, effects of crisis. It is stressful, of course, disruptive, and can affect biological, psychological, and social functioning, and can produce disturbed emotions, impair motor functioning, and negative impact on ongoing behavior. Examples of crisis situations: when a person is on natural disaster, okay, nagkakaroon ng crisis, death of a loved one, disabling or life-threatening illnesses or may sakit or injury, cultural dislocation, rape, premature births, adolescent out of wedlock pregnancy or early pregnancy, child abuse, battered wife, domestic, and a lot more. Okay? Reaction to crisis. Ito yung nagiging reaction ng client sa crisis that we should know. Initial rise and tension accompanied by shock or sometimes denial of the provoking event. Reaction to the crisis, confusion, overwhelmed, helpless, angry, and depressed. Coughing and degree of responsiveness, either positive or negative. Crisis intervention, by the way, its goals are A, to reduce immediate harmful effects of the stressful events. Second is to help mobilize the latent capacities and capabilities of person directly affected so that he can cope more effectively with the effects of the crisis. Next, we move on to family-centered approach. The family is the unit of interest dito. In the Philippines, casework is family-centered din. Kasi nga we are familiar oriented people, Filipino. It means that human beings can be understood and be helped best in the context of family. Of course, I think mostly naman talaga, kadalasan, no, even mostly, most sa problema ng isang kliyente, sometimes sa pamilya yan eh. Components of casework, we have the person, the problem, the place, and the process. Yung iba dito, itong person, ito yung client. Okay, the problem, of course, the problem, the place, kasali na dito yung place agency, kasali na dito yung worker, and of course, the process which shows the work do. And of course, we move on naman po sa group work models and approaches. Ano ba yung ginagamit ang mga approaches and models in the group work, in group setting, setup, or context. First is the developmental approach. It is proposed by Trop. This give priority attention to social development, concerns such as unemployment and underemployment. The basic characteristic of this is that it has major themes. The first one, it is humanistic, meaning the worker and group share common human condition. The worker is real and understandable. Second is, it is phenomenological, means the worker and the group are concerned with what is happening, what they are doing about it, and how and what they should do next. Next, it is also developmental in theme. It sees people as being continually able to move forward in a life process of self-realization or fulfillment of potential in social functioning. Here's the basic areas of the operation. We have the group goal achieving process. It has deliberation, decision, and action. Interpersonal relations, we have the instrumental behaviors that is consciously directed toward common goal efforts. Next is expressive behavior, unintended behavior that are emotionally in nature, expressing. Individual self-actualization. Helping process dito is that we have the direct help and the indirect help. Direct help, meaning the worker may give approval, encouragement, affection, concern, stimulation, confrontation with others. Indirect help, worker asks the group to look at the individual behavior that facilitates or block the process. Yung direct help, yung worker yung gumagawa. Nasa kanya yung diretso yung process. Yung indirect help naman, tinatanong ng worker yung mga kliyente. Kung ano yung magagawa nila, ano yung problema. Indirect. The remedial model naman. Proponent dito is that Robert D. Minter. Persons who can benefit from this approach include out-of-school youth, street children, drug dependents, and many other more, who are headed towards deviant paths. Okay, remedy. Somehow, para siyang yung term niya is clinical. Interactional view of deviance. Intindihin natin ano yung deviance. Okay, first, kasi ito yung sinusolve ng remedial approach. Is a distinguishing characteristic of remedial model. All behavior amenable to change is regarded as socially induced. So, acquired through learning and related processes. It is exhibited, evoked, or constrained within the context of specific social situations. Group is both a means of treatment and a context of treatment. As a means, it serves as a vehicle through which peer interactions and influences are used to affect group members. And as a context, so ito po yung pag-intindi ng ano yung group. As a context, it provides opportunities for direct worker-client interactions which can contribute to change. We have here a lot of strategies. We have direct means of influence and the indirect means of influence. We move on to direct means of influence, meaning yung worker. Nasa worker yung mostly na ginagawa. Direct means of influence, meaning the worker as central person or the object of identification and drives. The second one is the worker as symbol and spokesman, agent of legitimate norms, yung gumagawa ng norms and values. The next one is the worker as motivator and stimulator, meaning he defines the individual goals and tasks. Next is the worker as executive controller of the members' roles, meaning he modifies the client's role and position within the group structure and assists a member who holds a particular position in the group structure to perform more effectively. Okay? Kung kinokontrol ng worker yung mga role, baka may iba kasi mag-overpower. Para lahat talaga maka-contribute. And of course, we have the indirect means of influence. Okay? Medyo labas na po dito yung worker. First, we have the group processes. Ano yung purposes rather nangyayari sa grupo. Next is selection of group members. This is crucial. Next, nature of group activities, size of groups, group operating and governing procedures, group development. Extra group means of influence naman po tayo. Social rules and relations of client prior to client status, significant others, social system which clients are members, social environment of the treatment group. Now we move on to interactionist approach. Prominent dito is William Schwartz. There is a symbiotic relationship between people and their environment. And therefore, function of social work is to mediate the process through which the individual and society reach out to each other through a mutually need for self-fulfillment, as according to William Schwartz. Mediating function dito ng interactionist approach. This approach, the worker's skills come from two interrelated responsibilities that of helping each individual client negotiate the system immediately, crucial to the problems, and helping the system, not just the client but also the system, reach out to incorporate the client deliberate service and thus carry out function to the community. So meron tayong illustration dito. So ito yung kuan dito, client, and of course the system, kung saan yung client. And then the worker is interactioning to both of this. The group, the worker addresses each member whose relationship to the group this member needs to negotiate, and the group as a whole has to negotiate the larger system to which it is part, the agency, the neighborhood, etc. We have four major features. The group is a collective in which people face and interact with each other. The people need each other for certain specific purposes. Next is the people come together to work on common tasks, and the work is embedded in relevant agency function. We move on to crisis intervention approach, associated with the writings of Eric Lindemann, Gerald Jacobson, and Gerald Kaplan, Howard, and others. Characteristic of crisis intervention, making help accessible within 24 to 72 hours lang of the request of cry for help. Since prompt intervention is necessary where there should be no intake procedures and no waiting. So sometimes talaga, wala nang intake po. Kasi, sometimes kasi, emergency kasi po to, okay? Participation in the helping process is usually voluntary. Since most crisis states are limited for 4 to 6 weeks, a maximum of 6 sessions is seen as adequate. 4 steps approach in group crisis intervention. Step 1, the search for precipitating event and its meaning to the client. Ano po yung precipitating event? Ito po yung mga tanong na dapat i-raise natin. When did the discomfort begin, or when the client extra feelings worse? And what reminders have there been for a previous situation that was upsetting? Next is, why is the client coming for help? Ano yung dahilan? Step 2, the search for coping means utilized by client. Ito po yung mga tanong dapat, no? What has the client tried to do to cope with the stress focused by the precipitating event? Next is what means to coping did the client use in the past to cope with similar situations. Step 3, the search for alternative ways of coping that might better fit the current situation. What different approaches to modifying the problem might be feasible to try out? What outside resources might be needed and tapped for helping to resolve the problem or dilemma? Implementation po dito or treatment, no, is first we have the material arrangement task. It concerns with the provision of concrete assistance and services. And of course, we also have psychosocial tasks. It concerns with the dealing with the client's feelings, doubts, ambivalences, or the division on confusing sa mind, anxieties, and despair. Step 4, review and support of the client's effort to cope in new ways, evaluation of the result. Ito po yung tanong na dapat ating tanungin. What worked? What did not work in the client's experimentation with new approaches to solving the problem? And when does the client begin to show signs of relief, improve ego functioning? And of course, we move on to also community organizing. Okay? What do you think about community organizing? No? By the way, it's part of 3 methods of social work. Ano po to? Okay? So, let's define ano yung community organizing. What is community organizing? Community organizing is the process of building power to involving a constituency in identifying problems they share and the solutions to those problems that they desire. Identifying the people and structure that can make the solutions possible, enlisting those targets in the efforts through negotiation and using confrontation and pressure when needed. And building an institution that is democratically controlled by the constituency that can develop the capacity to take and further problems and that embodies the will and power of the constituency. Okay, so it's more on organizing. Okay, helping people, tinitignan, ini-empower yung people, and of course, empowering the people to change the structure. Mostly talaga, yung community organizing, if there is a structure in the community na hindi nakakatulong for community organizing or for the improvement or development of the people, sometimes, no, ito na yung sinasabi dito, no, enlisting efforts, negotiating, and sometimes talaga, confrontation yung nangyayari. And of course, nakikita din natin dito, no, is that building an institution. Okay, institution does not talk about building. No? It talks about sometimes people who organize themselves for their common good. We have here the models of community organizing. First is the community development. So, kaya nga sabi ko, actually, CD is just part of us. Okay? So, social planning and, of course, social action. Okay? So, sometimes ito yung tinatawag sa community development is that locality development. Okay? In the Book of Mendoza. Ano yung community development or also known as locality development? For purposes that community change may be pursued optimally through broad participation of a wide spectrum of people at a local community level in a goal, determination, and action. Community development can be tentatively defined as a process designed to create conditions of economic and social progress for the whole community with its participation in the fullest possible reliance on the community's initiative. It's more on fullest participation talaga, maramihan to. And examples dito of community development agency, we have the Kalay Seeds in CDDP or KISI and CDDP or Kapit Bisig Laban sa Kahirapan, Comprehensive and Integrated Delivery of Social Services, National Community Driven Development Program. It is a poverty alleviation program of the national government implemented by DSWD. Okay, Kalay Seeds. And what is social action? Social planning approach emphasizes a technical process or problem solving which regards to substantive social problems. So ito po yung substantive social problem, sometimes target po yung kailangan. Example, kung yung locality development natin is poverty, malakihan kasi yung kailangan. Yung social planning naman po, it's more focused on a substantive problems such as delinquency, housing, mental health. Rational, deliberate, planned, and controlled change has a central place in this model. Social planning involves community and government groups and organizations working together in collaboration to address critical issues facing a community. Examples of social planning: A. Conducting a need assessment of people who are homeless. O homeless lang. So, di ba, poverty. Ang laki yan, poverty. So, maybe there is no home. Isa yung ka-aspect. So, social planning lang yan, no? Specific and substantive problem. Using the results to a new planned housing development if needed location with appropriate services in the community. What is social planning? Social planning approach presupposes a disadvantaged segments. Okay, so social planning action rather, if there is a disadvantaged segment. So, if you are familiar in conflict theory ni Karl Marx, ito po yun talaga, no? The disadvantaged segments of the population that needs to be organized perhaps in alliance with others in order to make adequate demands of the larger community for increased resources or treatment more in accordance with social justice and democracy. Kung mayroon pong natatapakang mga segment na community, example, katutubo or other group, its practitioners aim at basic changes in major institution or community practices. They seek, redistribution of power, resources, and decision-making in the community or changes in basic policies of formal organization. And let's check out. Okay, so ito po yun, may mga rally. But then, there are times na so ito po yung parang pakikibaka. But we are doing it in a legal process. May para i-charge naman yata to, okay? Stop stealing children, ganun po yun, social action, kalay seeds. Isa po to, so ito po, ito, I believe this is just a social planning. Okay, yung problema dito is road, walang road, or maybe drainage. This is social planning. Okay, ito din, social planning din to. Maybe the problem here is drainage. It doesn't talk about here locality development or kasi specific problem lang kasi ito, so social planning siya. Ito, if yung sinesolve dito is poverty, this is locality development, pero sinesolve din naman to ng social planning. But sometimes talaga, yung social locality development, it's more focused on the bigger problems. Kung alam natin yung meso, micro, meso, and macro. Kumbaga yung macro, yung biggest talaga, big problems, it is solved by community development or locality development. The meso one is that it is solved by, it depends din, by social planning. And actually, the social action, both interact, solve the bigger problems, small ones, but meron lang talaga isang natatapakan, okay? Meron small segment of the community which is nakaranas ng injustices, okay? Ito, we have the planning there. Community organizing process, Community organizers, The community organizer or CO is vital person in facilitating the whole community. So, first process po dito, is that a community organizer should have, first is that understanding of development theories. Kailangan po yan, okay? And kaya nga, I think I have the assignment to social development goal. Anyways, I just remind you. And concept and processes of community organizing. Good social and community relation skills to promote social integration in the community. Of course, an ability to work with teams talaga. Kasi hindi mo to kaya pa ikaw lang. And the knowledge and skills to enable communities to access specialized technical assistance in instances when it is needed. Next is sensitive to local culture, okay? Kasi nga, you really have to be, to assess yourself. Baka may bias. Gender sensitive, of course. Question to ask yourself as a community organizer. Do I talk to both men and women in the community? Kasi baka bias ka kasi. Do I feel comfortable living in the community with minimum amenities? As a social worker, you must, Do I dress appropriately? Kasi may mga times kasi, yung mga worker, dapat din, pumasok ka talaga sa community, wag yung social, yung sobra yung damit mo, para kang donya doon. Hindi ka lalapitan ng mga tao na awkward sila sa'yo. Anyways, Am I sensitive to the culture of the people? Next is my presence felt in the community. Baka kasi hindi ka nagsasali. Okay? So, how do you organize? So, meron tayo ditong community organizing processes. First is the pre-entry level, entry into the community. Second, or integration phase. Third is the community planning and implementation. The fourth is the strengthening of the organization. Next is the monitoring and evaluation. And sixth is the phase out or termination phase. So, ano yung pre-entry? Okay, so do the following activities before the entry in the community. Next is the community organizing and training orientation. And so, dapat may orientation. So, site selection. Site selection, establishing the set of criteria for the choice of the area. So, tinitignan yung area. It is essential that the community members are receptive to non-government organizations and the type of project they are proposing. This is done through consultation with the leaders of the community. Other consideration include the peace and order. Baka kasi mapano dyan yung worker, interest and willingness of the local government to establish partnership with the project and accessibility of the program site. This is also involved gathering secondary data about the community from local government, selected key informants of NGO that have done organizing work in the area, administrative preparation of the part of the implementing agency, setting up local office, hiring personnel. Okay? So, the second part is the entry into the community. So, it's more on assessment dito, okay? Para siyang assessment itong pre-entry. Tinitignan lahat, no? So, preparation phase, okay? So, assessment, diba, is our preparation. Next, entry into the community or integration phase. At this stage, the community organizer integrates into the community. Pupunta na siya. And establishes relationship based on mutual trust and respect. Other activities may be include courtesy calls. First muna, barangay. Dapat alam, mag-meet kayo ng barangay, hito na kami dito. Hito na kami, sir, no? So, sa amin before, we have this courtesy call talaga we had, no? So, kikausapin talaga yung barangay, okay? Next, identification of potential leaders, what I say, the elites, no? So, meron tayo yan, no? So, meaning, no? Mobilizing the elite. Okay, next is data gathering through involvement in the community social and livelihood activities. Example, fishing activities or the use of participatory coastal resources assessment approach. And formation of the core group. Dapat ka na mag-form dito, okay? That could initiate CRM. Okay? Activities. The community may have various ways of working together. These existing networks must be considered when forming a core group. Leadership training for the core group dapat. Next is community planning and implementation. Dito na po, okay? Understandable naman po siya, okay? Next is strengthening the organization. So, ito po yung gagawin mo, okay? So, strengthening the organization is crucial in sustaining the operation. So, may mga nangyari na activities. Now, we are going to strengthening the organization na nabuo. This entails building the capacity of the organization leaders and members to take the roles currently assumed by the community. Kasi, yung mindset kasi natin dyan, kung wala na tayo dyan, can they still stand? Okay? The organizer should then undertake any of the following activities to further institutionalize their processes and mechanism. Training of the leaders, no? Para maging leader din sila, no? Is that consolidating, organizing, operating procedures, networking and building alliances from other groups and organizations, strengthening socioeconomic services, specialized training, okay, and development training para sa mga potential trainers, no? Maintenance and monitoring naman. Then, no? So, ganun. Next is monitoring and evaluation. This is so understandable naman, okay? So, and of course, the phase-out phase. Okay, so termination phase. Hindi yan mawawala. So, meron din tayong rules dito ng social workers regarding CO processes. Okay? Broker, no? The broker means the social worker involved in the process of making referrals to link the family or person to the needed services. It's understandable. I discussed this. Advocate. In this role, social worker fight for the rights of others and work to obtain needed resources by convincing others of the legitimate needs and the rights of the members of the society. Okay? Case manager. Case manager are involved in locating services and assisting their clients to access those services. And of course, educator, it's all about educating and teaching, no? Disciplining and communication, okay? Facilitator, about facilitating, organizing, and of course, managing, okay? So, enabling, no? Enabler assist clients with coping with the difficult circumstances and engaging clients, becoming active participants in the problem solving. Mediator, no? It's all about mediating, no? Mediator role involves resolving arguments and conflicts within micro, meso, and macro systems. And let me give you this. Social work is a profession you can be proud to be. Okay, thank you.